Hello, YouTubers, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have 14 articles for you this morning, and all the URLs are in the description of the video for your convenience. The first one here is off of Conservative Tribune. It says, Pentagon reports expose maritime militia. While problems coming out of the Middle East have dominated news headlines for years now, China has become an increasing threat in the Asian region as it rapidly expands its military. A number of advanced weapons that pose a serious threat to the United States' interests in the region. Weapon revealed by the Department of Defense annual report to Congress on China is something that should be of concern to all U.S. citizens. Boats that could be used by paramilitary forces all over the South China Sea or anywhere else in Asia. China is building a state-owned fishing fleet for its maritime militia force in the South China Sea, the report stated. Militia is a subset of China's national militia, an armed reserve force of civilians available for mobilization to perform basic support duties. These military groups could deploy all over Chinese waters, which would make them very hard to detect. Used the CMM forces with great success in the past, and to think it won't continue to use them in future conflicts. The CMM has played significant roles in a number of military campaigns, coercive incidents over the years. 2011 harassment of Vietnamese survey vessels, Scarborough Reef standoff, and the 2014 IO one oil rig standoff, the report noted, indicate how many CCM groups exist, but hopefully the Pentagon has an idea of how many there are and simply hasn't released that information to the public. It has a very significant naval presence in the waters of Southeast Asia, counter the rising threat of China, as well as to keep an eye on North Korea. To know what sort of maritime assets China has, so are aware of potential threats to protect themselves. I have for you is off of Conservative Tribune. Since the hamster decides to cooperate here, there we go. U.S. bomber now buzzing Russians. Jets and bombers have flown close to the U.S. airspace and buzzed U.S. aircraft and naval vessels over international waters for years now, and the past few months. Received a taste of their own medicine. According to the UK Daily Express, a Russian Su-27 fighter jet scrambled to intercept a U.S. B-52 strategic bomber on Tuesday as it flew over the neutral waters of the Baltic Sea near Russia's airspace. The crew of the Russian Su-27 object at a safe distance identified it as a strategic bomber. A spokesman for the Russian Navy Ballistic Fleet Air Defense Patrol said. Reported that a Pentagon spokesperson said the B-52 was involved in a routine mission as part of a broader training exercise with the members of NATO in the international airspace above the Baltic Sea. The B-52 bomber had been deployed to an airbase in the UK earlier this month, Louisiana, at Barksdale Air Force Base in order to take part in the annual military training exercise. According to Reuters, Russia also had a MiG-21 fighter jet intercept an P-3 Orion anti-submarine patrol aircraft that had gone near Russia's airspace sea. The fact that NATO forces are converging near Russia's border and carrying out military exercises supported by strategic bombers from the USA capable of carrying nuclear weapons hardly helps the tensions in Europe, Foreign Ministry official Mikhail told Russian media outlet Sputnik, Reuters reported. Russian Air Force Commander Pyrot Denikin reportedly told Interfax that he was troubled by the appearance of the B-52 over the Baltic Sea, as such an occurrence hasn't happened in quite some time. It does not deserve respect, Denikin. Strategic bombers should not fly so close to our land borders. How Americans feel when Russian bombers cruise close to our borders. I guess the medicine shout doesn't taste as good when they get it back. Denikin's sentiment ordered up the chain of Russian military leadership before these tit-for-tat incidents spark an actual conflict. The next article is off of Newsmax. Trump expected to roll out new Cuba policy as early as next Friday. Trump is expected to travel to Miami as early as next Friday to announce a new Cuba policy that could tighten rules on trade and travel to the island increased by his predecessor Barack Obama, according to a U.S. official and two people familiar with the matter. Trump's aides were nearing completion of a comprehensive review of Cuba policy and are expected to send recommendations to his national security team president in upcoming days, a U.S. official said. Plans were in the works for Trump to roll out his new approach next Friday in a speech in Miami, but a delay is still possible if it takes longer to make a decision, according to people familiar with the decision or with the discussion. This article is also off of Newsmax. Let me grab a drink here. Okay, this one says, House Intel panel asked White House for any Trump-Comey tapes. The House Intelligence Committee investigating Russia Friday asked the White House to confirm and produce any possible tapes of President Donald Trump's conversation with former FBI Director James Comey. Republican Representative Mike Conaway of Texas and Democrat Adam Schiff of California set a June 23rd deadline for production of any White House recordings or memoranda of Comey's conversation with President Trump now exist or have in the past. In a letter to the White House counsel, Don McGahn, the legislator also asked Comey to produce any notes or memoranda in his possession memorializing discussions with Trump with the same deadline. Came within hours of President Trump refusing to say whether the tapes existed at a news conference in the White House Rose Garden. I'll tell you something about that maybe sometime in the near future, Trump told reporters, later adding, I'll tell you about it over a short period of time. I'm not hiding anything, he says. The article is off of BizPac Review. The law professor who Comey leaked info to for the New York Times, well, he went into hiding. The friend whom former FBI Director James Comey entrusted to leak a memo of his conversations with President Trump to the New York Times has apparently gone into hiding. Following Thursday's Senate Intelligence Committee hearing in which Comey testified that he had asked his friend to leak the conversation details, Columbia University law professor Daniel Richman confirmed to reporters that he was and then disappeared, the New York Post reported. Richman, a former federal prosecutor who worked with Comey at Columbia in 2013, left his home on Henry Street in Brooklyn, Richmond Heights, shortly after the hearing. Neighbors and family refused to answer questions, and doormen at the building turned reporters away. Comey may have inadvertently opened a can of worms on himself by telling the Senate Intel Committee that he asked a friend of mine to share the content of the memo with a reporter prompt the appointment of its special counsel. Shortly afterward, the Columbia University website reportedly crashed, according to the Post, as it was inundated with people trying to find out more about the man whose biography at the Ivy League school states he is currently an advisor to the FBI Director James Comey. The biography also notes that Richmond was sued the Department of Justice, the Department of the Treasury, on federal criminal matters. Days before the November 2016 election, Richmond appeared on CNN with Anderson Cooper to discuss his friend Comey's decision to release information about emails related to the investigation of Hillary Clinton and her email server. The next article is off BizPac Review. Set up to get millions in book movie deals, producers looking for actor to play martyr FBI director. Disgraced FBI Director James Comey joins the growing list of political fat cats set to rake in millions from the notoriety they gained by obstructing President Trump. Comey, age 56, is reportedly being wooed by the publishing world following his high-profile firing and unlawful leaks to media outlets like the New York Times. To offer him a book advance of $10 million to dish dirt on Trump and Hillary Clinton. While a career politician being fired hardly sounds like an intriguing storyline, Trump's undisputed star power has made James Comey a household name. By being fired by the Donald, Jim Comey's going to have the biggest Washington golden parachute ever, a publishing insider told the Daily Mail. Trump's going to make him a Hollywood celebrity, a litany lion, and a multimillionaire. Trump's going to kick himself, but he'll be a major player in both the big screen and the book story. An acquisition editor for a top New York publishing house said Trump feud has elevated Comey so much that his firing will provide the ultimate golden parachute to subsidize a lavish retirement. Proposal hits my desk. I've already been authorized to offer him $10 million, the editor said. Jim Comey's story has everything from White House intrigue to possible corruption and law breaking. His explosive story makes West Wing and House of Cards on par with Mr. Rogers. Hollywood producers are also salivating at the chance to trash President Trump with a movie based on Comey's life that will culminate with his confrontation with the brash billionaire, one movie agent said. I know one top producer who's already talking to stars to cast the Comey role. He has to be tall, good-looking, and a Jimmy Stewart, John Wayne type hero. I was mesmerized when I spent the whole day watching Comey testify. Comey could expect a movie deal tied into the book worth many millions of dollars, more of millions. Comey's sudden elevation is being fueled by the left-wing media fawning portrayals of him as a martyr after Trump fired him. Ironically, Democrats and liberal media had viciously slammed Comey for months after his July 2016 press conference, where he criticized Hillary Clinton's gross mishandling of top-secret government intel. Time, many liberals demanded James Comey be fired, but when Trump did fire him, they predictably sided with Comey in a knee-jerk reaction to undermine the president. Comey obviously learned a lot by watching grifters Bill and Hillary Clinton, who cavalierly used their stints in political office to rake in hundreds of millions of dollars. So it seems the swamp just gets richer while paying lip service to helping the poor. The next article is off of Liberty Headlines. It says, Trump's lawyer reinforced Comey committed perjury. Yesterday, the Twitter sphere lit up when Julie Davis of the New York Times sent out a tweet suggesting that Trump's personal attorney had potentially made a serious blunder in mixing up his timeline of when Comey first leaked details of his meeting with Trump to the Times. Here's what Kaczynski said yesterday. Although Mr. Comey testified he only leaked the memos in response to a tweet. The public record reveals that the New York Times was quoting from these memos the day before the referenced tweet, which believes Mr. Comey's excuse unauthorized disclosure of privileged information and appears to entirely retaliatory. Davis and most of the media assumed that Kasowitz was referring to an article published on May the 16th by the New York Times entitled "Comey Memo Says Trump Asked Him to End Flynn Investigation." Kasowitz is mistaken regarding the New York Times stories on Comey's memos. We never quoted to Trump's 5/12 tweet regarding the tapes. First story doing so was 5/16. That Trump's tweet about Comey tapes was sent 4 days prior, it couldn't have possibly been triggered by the New York Times story, as Kasowitz suggested, which led Ms. Davis of the Times to publish her gotcha tweet. Unfortunately for Davis, the New York Times Kasowitz has just released a clarifying statement which points out that he was never referring to the May 16th article in his statement yesterday, but rather an article published on May the 11th, the day before Trump's tweet, entitled "In a Private Dinner, Trump Demanded Loyalty, Comey Demurred." Discuss in detail the same facts presented in Comey's now infamous memos. Let me grab some more articles real quick here. Quick like a bunny. Okay, the next one is off the Conservative Tribune. It says Trump shows victims here. To repeal and replace Obamacare, President Donald Trump appeared with victims of former President Barack Obama's signature program in Cincinnati on Wednesday. On an airport tarmac in the Ohio city, the president said that the program was in absolute turmoil and that premiums were exploding, according to the Washington Times. Ohio, which is part for his infrastructure initiative, came just one day after insurance company Anthem announced it was pulling out of Ohio market. 20 counties in the state without any option to buy individual insurance from the state's Obamacare insurance exchange. Obamacare is in a total death spiral, and the problem will only get worse if Congress fails to act, Trump said. Obamacare is dead for a long time. Alongside the president were two families who have been harmed by the cost of the burdens of Obamacare, according to the Cincinnati Enquirer. Rhea and Michael Whalen had to stop to the 15 of their playground equipment company because of the cost of Obamacare. They also were forced to sakes. Like it's lost its mind. They were also forced to switch doctors for, well, for goodness sakes. Let's try one more time here. They were also forced to switch doctors for the birth of their daughter. Our experience with Obamacare has been a pretty negative one. Our doctors to losing, we could no longer afford insurance. The Columbus Dispatch. To scroll up a little bit. There we go. Meanwhile, Dan Withrow of Louisville, Kentucky said he lost and still had to pay 150% more in premiums because of Obamacare. It's been horrible for small business, Withrow said. On getting rid of Obamacare echoed similar statements in his speech. Across America, premiums are skyrocketing, insurers are fleeing, and the American people are paying much more for much worse coverage, the president said. The coverage is horrendous. It's horrendous. Democrats are destroying healthcare in this country. We will get no votes no matter what we do. Greatest plan in the history of the world. You Democratic vote. It's all going to be Republicans or bust. Obamacare have piled up almost as quickly as premiums to repeal and replace. Get the next article up here. This one's off of Newsmax. Mueller taps top criminal for Russia probe. Officers working on getting it up here. Spinning that wheel. To up here, I will read the article to you. Special Counsel Robert Mueller. I thought I had it. Wait, let's try again. Special Counsel Robert Mueller has tapped top criminal law specialist Michael investigation into possible collusion by associates of President Donald Trump officials, the Washington Post reported on Friday. Scroll a little more, please. Justice, well, that much. Scroll clear to the bottom of the dead burn page. Sister's playing with me. Thing going on here. Gracious. Okay, Dreeben, a Justice Department Deputy Solicitor General, is by both Democrats and Republicans for his extensive knowledge of criminal law, the article stated. He will work part-time with Mueller. Michael is the most brilliant and most knowledgeable federal criminal lawyer in America, period, said Walter Dellinger at Duke University School of Law, who also served as acting Solicitor General for the 1996-1997 term of the Supreme Court. And is held in the highest esteem by the FBI and lawyers in U.S. attorneys' offices all over the country, Dellinger added. U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara told Dreeben Friday that he was one of the top legal and appellate minds at the DOJ in modern times. Mueller, a former FBI director, has been building his team of legal experts as his investigations get underway. Former Deputy Assistant Jeannie Rhee and Andrew Wiseman, the Justice Department's fraud section. Also named to aid the investigation are Andrew Zebley, Mueller's chief of staff when he was FBI chief, and James Quarles, who was an assistant special prosecutor on the Watergate Special Prosecution Force. The article is off of the Conservative Tribune. Trump shows victims of Obamacare. Well, we just did that one. Okay, now let's try this. This is off of journalism. Obama takes a veiled swipe at Trump, warning of executive authority abuse. Obama warned against the threat of authoritarian voices during a speech in Canada on Tuesday in a thinly veiled critique of his successor, President Donald Trump. He stated in January 2014 that we're not just going to be waiting for legislation. And I've got a phone. And to sign executive orders and take executive actions and administrative actions that move the ball forward, he said. Former president expressed concern Tuesday about the abuse of executive authority, telling his audience at the Montreal Chamber of Commerce, I'm convinced that well, gee whiz. My eyes see it, my mouth's not saying it. We'll try one more time. I am convinced that the future does not belong to strong men. He added that people should overcome fear and not listen to those who call for isolation or nationalism and those who suggest rolling back the rights of others. Like this, people looking for control and certainty, it's inevitable, Obama stated, but it is important to remember that the world has gone through similar moments. Our history also shows there is a better way. Obama was strongly critiqued during his presidency for proclivity to push the limits of executive action. Senator Ted Cruz released a report in April of 2015 titled The Obama Administration's Abuse of Power. 76 lawless acts, try that again, by the then president and his executive agencies. Among them were disregard for the 1996 welfare reform law, work requirements, a lack of enforcement for Defense of Marriage Act, executive amnesty under the DACA and DAPA programs, numerous changes to the provisions of Obamacare without congressional authorization, Operation Fast and Furious, Operation Choke Point, the IRS targeting of conservative groups, multiple recess appointments, which the Supreme Court unanimously ruled unconstitutional, and the surveillance of the Associated Press and other media outlets. Hearing for Jeff Sessions for Attorney General in January, the Texas Republican added more items to the list, paying $2 billion in ransom to Iran for the release of American hostages and releasing thousands of criminally convicted illegal aliens into the streets of the United States. Constitutional scholar Jonathan Turley wrote in 2014 that the United States is at a constitutional tipping point. The rise of an Uber presidency unchecked by the other two branches. In a testimony before Congress that year, he said of Obama's presidency, it is tempting to embrace rule by a single person who offers to govern alone to get things done. However, this is the very siren's call that our founders warned us to resist. Executive fiat became so obvious that even Saturday Night Live made the subject of a popular skit the same year of his pen and phone proclamation. And they have a video of that in this article if you want to pull it up to watch that. The sketch is a play on the old school house rock cartoon that shows how a bill becomes a law. The naive boy in the story, you know, son, there's actually an easier way to get things done around here. It's called an executive order. The president then turns around and pushes the character playing a bill down the Capitol steps. Have to go through Congress at some point, the boy asked incredulously. That's adorable. You still think that's how government works? The executive order character chimes in. Executive order then reads himself, legal status to 5 million undocumented immigrants. Go big or go home, huh? He asked Obama. Article headlines, it says activists opposing Share law receive death threats. Sierra rallies set for Saturday are receiving death threats, and an American patriotic group has responded by private security for the event. Act for America is sponsoring the anti-Shera pro-freedom rallies in 28 cities and 19 states around 10 a.m. in most venues and continuing until about 2 p.m. The federal speakers, including Lauren Morris in Austin, Texas, and Delica Dawn, have received death threats. Learned, and Oath Keepers has asked its volunteers to come armed to the rallies to protect the speakers. Morris and Dawn are both survivors of female genital mutilation and are scheduled to go public with their stories at the rallies in Austin and Dallas. President and founder of Oath Keepers said both Morris and Dawn are incredibly sympathetic examples of victims of Shera. And that is why pro-Shera forces are trying to intimidate them out of the speaking engagements. The National Office of Act for America contacted me and asked for our help, and we answered the call, Rhodes told WND, because both death threats against speakers, we are taking it very seriously. Members are made up of retired cops and military veterans. A very real threat of radical Islamist terrorism at one of these events tomorrow, and we have encouraged our volunteers to be armed, Rhodes said. Rhodes said Oath Keepers has issued national call to action for patriotic Americans to attend the June 10 rallies and help defend free speech. We are answering the call to defend free speech against those who would use terrorist violence or threat of violence to shut it down, Rhodes said. President Bridget Gabriel believes Shera is incompatible with Western democracy and the freedom it affords, not only because Shera is often the catalyst for violent jihad, but because of the brutal treatment of women and other minorities in Muslim societies where Shera prevails. There's already evidence that Shera rules are being privately enforced in some Muslim enclaves in the United States, such as Cedar Riverside community of Minneapolis, where police have been made aware of a team of Shera cops and yet have made no arrests, as previously reported by WND. Have complained about Shera cops to Minneapolis police to no avail. In America include not only FGM, which is now known to be practiced throughout the Muslim communities in Minnesota, Michigan, and areas of the U.S. with heavy Muslim populations, but also honor violence and honor killings, examples of which are presented with photos of American victims on the Act for America website. The Department of Justice recently announced the cases GM in America with charges filed against 2 doctors in the area. The 2 doctors are believed to have mutilated the genitals of an estimated 100 more girls of 6 and 8, according to a story Thursday in the Detroit News. Jumana, one of 2 Muslim physicians in the Detroit area, accused of secretly performing FGM on girls ages 6 through 8. One of 2 Muslim physicians in the Detroit area accused of secretly performing FGM on girls ages 6 through 8. For one, let's see, they had that paragraph in there twice. I don't know why. Okay, the attorney for one of the doctors has already argued in a pretrial hearing that her client, Dr. Jumana Nargawala of Northville, Michigan, was not violating any laws because she was merely practicing her religion under the protection of the First Amendment. According to the federal criminal complaint filed in Michigan, the surgery is performed to suppress female sexuality, reduce sexual pleasure, and promiscuity. The procedure has been illegal in the U.S. since 1996, and there are no health benefits for girls and women, according to the World Health Organization. An interactive map shows the 28 cities holding rallies can be found at the Act for America website, and there's a link to it if you pull that up to view it. And then there is a list in this of the places that they were holding the rally yesterday. So You have that. And it says Rhodes issued the following statement on the Oath Keepers website. It says, I call the leadership of all Oath Keepers chapters with an ACT event in their state to step up strong, contact the event organizer, and help way possible with security, to include making these events a priority over any other activities in by their local state chapters, and encouraging as many of our well-trained police and military veterans as possible to assist with security, as well as the essential communications, intelligence, and medical personnel. All chapters with organized CPT teams need to commit those teams to these events. I also call on Oath Keepers leaders to encourage their chapter members to attend and to reach out to other local patriotic groups to participate as well. If there is not an event in your state, please do your best to assist in an event in a nearby state. The article is off of Liberty Writers. It says, liberals are seething at what Trump just did to fix our courts this morning. Continued to live up to promises he made to the American people during his campaign Wednesday night. The House announced 11 new judicial nominees to fill some of the more than 120 vacancies on federal courts throughout the country. These 11 new judges are conservative legal scholars with top-notch academic and work credentials. This new slate follows an earlier cohort of the 10 conservative judges. Chief counsel to the Judicial Crisis Network, Carrie Cervino, said about the nominees. Americans whose top concern in November was electing a president who would would put committed constitutionalists to the courts. This is another major victory. Woohoo! This is great to have judges who understood the importance of our Constitution and are willing to protect it. Most importantly, President Trump picked someone to replace Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch. Allison H. Eade has been tapped to serve in Gorsuch's place, Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit in Denver. And they got a video here. It says, here's a flashback to Justice Gorsuch's awesome nomination, if you want to watch that. Justice Eade had served as a law clerk to Supreme Court Justice and known constitutionalist Clarence Thomas. She had been on President Trump's list as possible Supreme Court candidate, and her appointment from Colorado Solicitor General to the Federal Courts of Appeals will strengthen her resume and make her a very strong Supreme Court contender should President Trump need to pick another justice. Justice Eade will definitely be one to watch. So much for the left's claim that President Trump hates women. All of the judges' confirmation hearings are set to begin soon, as 11 extremely high credentials, and it would be hard for the Democrats to come up with reasons for them not to be nominated. Keeping your word and picking men and women who uphold our Constitution. The next article is off of thesun.co.uk. Facebook wants to spy on people through their smartphone cameras and analyze the emotions on their face. Patents technology which monitors users' reactions to posts, messages, and adverts they see on its app. Facebook has been secretly developing creepy technology which spies on people and automatically analyzes their facial expression. Applied for a patent to capture pictures of a user through their smartphone. The creepy design, which dates back to 2015, were discovered by software company CBI Insight, which has been analyzing Mark Zuckerberg's emotion technology, it says. Patent document contains illustrations showing a person holding a smartphone with a camera taking a picture from which emotion characteristics like smiling or frowning are detected. If a person appears to be, or try this again, if a person appears to like what they're seeing, Facebook would place more of the same type of content in front of them. 2015 reveals Facebook's plan to watch you and read content on its social network and analyze your reaction. Its most recent patent aims to add emotion to your message based on typing speed and location. Patents don't always make it through to the end product, so it's not clear whether Facebook will bring it out feature. Researchers at CBI Insight warned that the plans could put a lot of people off using the service. On one hand, they want to identify which content is most engaging and respond to audiences' reaction. On the other, emotion detection is difficult, not to mention a PR and ethical minefield, it wrote in a blog spot. But that's not all. Facebook appears to have tested out similar technology to work out which emoji to send to people using a selfie. It could automatically send a smiley face and vice versa. Its most recent emotional patent, which was granted on May the 25th, aims to tackle a dilemma many of us have faced. To make your text messages come across exactly as you mean them to, and sarcasm or jokes are often lost in translation, leading to some awkward conversations. Lets the social network text more feelings so they won't be misconstrued. The system picks up data from the keyboard, mouse, touchpad, touchscreen to detect typing speed and how hard the keys are pressed. Accordingly, change the text font and size before shaping to make it more emotive and relevant to your mood. Facebook said it does not currently offer tools to detect emotion. If you want to check what Facebook sees and shares about you, check out its privacy policy, and they have a link to it here in this article if you want to pull that up and take a look. Reason not to use their app. The next one is off of June. Dems want Hillary Clinton to step out of the spotlight. Hillary Clinton announced at a St. Patrick's Day event in Scranton, Pennsylvania, that she was finally ready to put her presidential loss behind her and re-enter the political fray. I am ready to come out of the woods and help shine a light on what is already happening around kitchen tables at dinners like this, Clinton told, according to the New York Times. Less than 3 months later, her fellow Democrats have a stern demand for the former Democrat standard bearer back in the woods. That's according to The Hill, which contacted more than a dozen Democrats who have been infuriated by comments Clinton has made, blaming the DNC for her loss last November. Let's see. The most recent of these remarks came at the Recode conference in California last week, in which she said, I inherited nothing from the Democratic Party. It insolvency. Its data was mediocre to poor, non-existent, wrong. I had to inject money into it to keep it going. Good God, what is she doing? A source described it. Aide said. She apparently still really angry. I mean, we all are. The election was stolen from her, and that's how she feels. But again and again, talk about it. See, the aide continued, it's not helpful to the Democrats. It's not helpful to the country, and I don't think it's helpful to her. I want you to consider that quote carefully. Even people who've concluded that the election was stolen are telling her to cut out the lamentations. Not the only Democrat who thinks it's time for her to decamp like her name was Thoreau. If she is trying to come across as a leader of the angry movement in 2016, then she's achieving it, a former Obama aide said. But part of the problem she had was she didn't have a vision for the Democratic Party, and she needs to break and let others come to the forefront. Obama aide said Clinton's remarks make it more difficult to reboot a DNC that's in turmoil. It's hard to do that when you have former nominee out there in a newsy, aggressive manner. Newsy, aggressive, that's clearly gendered. Unnamed Obama aide. It's time to check your male privilege. I mean, assuming you are a male. Who worked on Clinton's campaign defended her by saying that Clinton now feels whatever she really feels now that she's seeking elected office again. She's saying the same stuff she would say on the phone call with me, the aide said, and I think she'll continue to have a national dialogue on what needs to be fixed. However, the aides seem to have revealed too much. We've long suspected that this is real Hillary Clinton, petty, vindictive, and totally unwilling to engage with anyone who doesn't the same vainglorious way she judges herself. Before November 8th of last year, Democrats overlooked these ghastly character flaws, mostly because they believed Clinton retaining the White House. And they suddenly discovered the house of Hillary's wrath at the vast right-wing conspiracy is now being trained upon them. It's difficult to have sympathy for these Democrats as long as they believed Hillary Clinton was a winning steed. They were more than willing to ride her, no matter how glaring her flaws were. In defeat, she's turned into a bucking bronco, eager to throw her supporters off the mount and trample them as vengeance. If the Democrats didn't see this coming, they have only themselves to blame. I have for you this morning. If you like what I'm doing here, please give it a thumbs up. Share it on your social media so everybody gets to hear the news. Subscribe if you haven't done that, and that way you'll stay informed. Have a great day.